Now, let me that we have a great deal of work to do on these issues. I will also include, as we have made public, our position, a crisis management framework. I have to say that we are now learning also by doing, the governments are learning by doing in the present period, but I think we have a great deal of work to do on these issues. And of course, we have now not only a theoretical vision, we have a practical vision. We have the lessons to be drawn from the present experience, and I am confident that these lessons are being drawn right now. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. President. You have agreed to answer a few questions. We thank you for that also. And we start, according to the program, with Ulrich Kater from DKBAG, who is sitting right there. So if you are already provided with the mic, excellent. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fischer, you already mentioned the importance of stabilizing the financial system. I wonder how far we are in this process of stabilizing. In a few 2 weeks we will get the results of the European banking stress tests, and even if the results of those tests perhaps may be encouraging, I wonder if we are not about to face a similar situation as the Japanese decade ago, that the European banking system is still undercapitalized, and undercapitalized in the sense that in times of high uncertainty, it's not the regulatory standards, but it's not sufficient for the regulatory standards, but that would mean that the European banks could be a constant source of uncertainty for all economic agents in the future. Would you agree that the European banking system is facing such problems, and what are the consequences for monetary policy in the future?
First of all, I think that it is good that the authorities in Europe, and we were very, very strong on that ourselves in the Governing Council of the ECB, have decided to engage in not only macro stress testing, but also in publication of individual results of the stress test. We see what are the results of these stress tests. My understanding is that each individual national authority is doing that job very, very carefully. The assumptions have been introduced in liaison with us and with the Commission, and we will see again the results. What we are calling for, of course, is that if it appears in some cases that there is a need for additional capital, as I said yesterday in the introductory remark, it would be done through the various means that are available, including, of course, having recourse, as has been observed in a number of cases, including in the US, to the issuance of new stocks and shares through a market channel, or if it is necessary, through additional help coming from authorities. And that we had said publicly. I would add also, of course, that we are permanently recommending that they utilize also, I would say, appropriate restraint in the so-called bonuses, packages, and so forth, which would permit to have additional capital, and that they would also utilize retained earnings to augment their solidity and the solidity of their balance sheet. So there are a number of means, but the idea is certainly that appropriate action would follow where and when needed. Thank you for the question.
Next question is from Daniel Gross from CEPS in Brussels.
Thank you, Volker. I want to ask a soft question, but
thank you, sir.
it refers to what Volker said at the very beginning, namely that the impression was, at least in this environment here, that the ECB has so far had a good crisis. Actually, if you look at opinion polls, the Eurobarometer opinion polls, which we know, presume the opposite is true. Confidence all across the euro area in the ECB has actually fallen to unprecedented levels and remains several standard deviations below the pre-crisis average. At the same time, you showed these graphs which are certain that inflation has been extremely close to the 2% target. Inflation expectations remain well anchored. So there's actually no reason for this drop in confidence. And I ask myself, therefore, where does this malaise come from? And I think it comes because there's a difference between actually what the ECB has to do right now, which is essentially quasi-fiscal policy, and its justification, which is price stability in the medium to long run. It's just difficult to tell people that you have to buy Greek and Irish and other bonds in order to guarantee price stability in the medium run. You have to perceive that the real reason is something else, which is unavoidable. In a financial crisis, monetary policy becomes quasi-fiscal. And as we said earlier, governments have basically used all their fiscal power. So at this point, it's only the ECB which is standing between meltdown and sustainable financial markets should another crisis arise. The question is, wouldn't it be better to be honest about this and tell people, okay, price stability seems to be pretty much assured, the European economy is anyway pretty sluggish, the global environment is pretty deflationary. What we, ECB, have to do right now is basically to correct the errors of governments and regulators and try to keep the financial system on an even keel.
Well, I understand your question. I will not respond yes. First of all, I think we have to understand that we are in an extraordinarily difficult period. This is the worst crisis since World War II. And I don't think it is disputed. My trust and the trust of most authorities that we are at the heart of the decisions that have been taken in the moment of the most intense tension have the feeling that it could have been, as I said, the worst crisis since World War I. So this is perceived by public opinion, and of course it creates, to my knowledge, in all countries, a sentiment of uneasiness that one can understand. On top of that, of course, you had a recession, which, despite the fact that we had avoided the Great Depression, has been very, very tough, very abrupt, very sharp. So I'm not surprised that responsible authorities in general have a problem with public opinion. You were generous enough not to mention what was the rating of governments, or what was the rating of parliaments, or what was the rating of other institutions. I think again, this situation is difficult. What we have to do is to live up to our responsibility. And it is true, and I will not depart from that what we've been doing was always to do things that were commanded by the situation in which we were, but with the idea that we had to correct disruption of markets, aberrant functioning of markets, without ever forgetting that we had only one needle in our compass, and we repeat that in all occasions, namely price stability. And I have to say also that the very solid anchoring of inflation expectation, which I explained, not exclusively, but largely because we are crystal clear in this respect. We have a yardstick, we publish the yardstick, we say that it is our goal, and we don't hesitate, as has been observed, to take decisions, even against, I have to say, strong recommendations by governments, of course, executive branches, or even by markets or by the mainstream of the economists. I have a number of. We refused to go from 2% to 1% in 2004 at a time where it would have been probably the mainstream recommendation of the economists, not to speak of other entities. We decided to augment rates in 2005, in December. We were advised not to do that. I'm speaking with your control chart. I am afraid by the IMF, by the OECD. You were in very good company. And by, of course, a large number of good advisors. So we have proved that we were inflexibly determined to deliver price stability. We even augmented rates. It was very, very heavily criticized in July 2008 when we thought that we could have the risk of undercurrent of inflation expectations because of the number of negotiations which were taking place in the euro area. And it was after the start of the turbulences, before Lehman Brothers, but after the start of the turbulences, and in a period which was difficult. So I think we are, in that respect, very, very clear. I would say that when we have had either to engage in our non-standard policy of up to the securities market program and the securities market program itself, the sentiment of the Governing Council was that it was necessary to help restore a more normal functioning of markets, which were very important. Of course, it was particularly visible at the level of the OA as a whole when our money market itself was upside down. But it was also the reason why we intervened recently in the securities market program. Thank you for your question.
The next question is from Kai Carstensen, who is the business cycle, head of the business cycle team at XII, right over here.
Thank you. Mr. President, I have two small questions. The first one adds to the last question, and it's about the security market program. Do you really think that was a success? I mean, you described what happened at that time, but with the benefit of hindsight, what we have now is Greek interest rates back at levels above 10%. We have all the risks now in the ECB balance sheet, and we have a damaged reputation of the ECB as we heard before. So was that really a success so far? And the second question, you briefly touched the monetary pillar of the ECB's monetary policy strategy and the possible revaluation of that pillar. Is that underway? And again, of course, with the benefit of hindsight, was the downgrading of the monetary pillar a few years ago, was that a mistake?
Could you elaborate on the downgrading of the monetary pillar? What do you mean?
Well, at least in some sense, many observers thought that the shift of the monetary pillar to be a cross-check only was a downgrading of that pillar. I guess the ECB does not adhere to that view, but that was the view of the public, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. First, it is not for me to qualify the success or the absence of success of any program. It is the observation. I would only draw your attention to one thought experiment. Try to reflect on the counterfactual. What would have happened for the transmission of our monetary policy in a number of economies in the euro area had we not decided what we have decided? I let you reflect on that. For the rest, I will only say that what I have observed, and I remain very prudent and cautious, is that progressively, week after week, we see, at least in terms of the animation of the secondary market, a situation which is going in the right direction. Again, I'm very cautious, very prudent. I'm not surprised with that, because I consider that the market had been very heavily influenced by the expectation that, and I'm speaking of the attitude of the market before the 7th of May, the sentiment again was that the European will not take decisions, speaking of the governments, and will not take tough decisions as regards their own fiscal policies, macro policies. Perhaps I could extend that to non-euro area countries, but